Night in the Gulf of Guinea is unlike anywhere else. The sea is pitch black like ink, the wind lashes your face, and the ship's engines deep below roar steadily like a heartbeat trying to stay calm. On that heavy cargo vessel, the night watch is usually just slow, endless minutes. Eyes glued to the screen, ears tuned to the waves, hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, until the normal shell begins to crack. A faint knock rises from the ship's side, then another, sharp and icy, like metal striking metal. The lookout steps out onto the deck, stares into the darkness, then turns back to the radar. A bright dot has appeared, small, but closing in. No identification, no response. The dot vanishes for a second, then returns, closer. And this time, it isn't alone. One dot becomes two, two becomes three. Tiny trails clinging to the ship's course as if they're tracking it on purpose. In the bridge, breathing becomes louder than the sea. The lookout calls the captain up, voice urgent but controlled. The captain walks in, scans the display, then looks out at the water, and in his eyes is something every sailor understands. This ship has been chosen. He orders an internal alert, instructs the crew to move to the designated safe area, secures key compartments, and restricts access to the deck. No one acts on their own. Then he reaches for the radio and sends an emergency distress call. No speeches, no debate, just one message. We are being approached. The alarm echoes through the ship, red lights flash, the narrow corridors fill with hurried footsteps and the slam of locks. The searchlight sweeps across the deck, wavering with the swell, and right by the railing, a figure appears for a split second, then slips back into the dark. From this moment on, everything depends on one thing: what order the captain gives next, before it's too late. If far offshore, the sea sometimes gives a ship room to breathe. In the Gulf of Guinea, it feels like a narrow corridor where everyone must pass, at the right time, in the right lane, at the right speed. This stretch of West African water is busy with trade. Cargo, oil, industrial supplies, ships moving in and out of port every day. Large vessels often have to slow down, alter course, wait for pilots, or hold steady lanes to avoid collisions. And those very necessary routines turn them into perfect targets. A massive hull, heavy inertia, slow maneuvering, and at night, deck lights that practically announce their position. Here, danger doesn't always come from long chases. It comes from fast, sharp strikes that unfold in minutes. From darkness near the coast, small boats can shoot out like arrows, skimming low on the water, so low they're hard to see, then latch onto a ship's side at the blind spot. The Gulf of Guinea has river mouths, narrow channels, mudflats, and complicated coastal waters. By day, they're trade routes. By night, they can become hiding places, where people vanish as quickly as they appear. And because the target is often the crew more than the ship itself, the psychological pressure is worse. The moment a handful of desperate men set foot on deck, the rules change. A commercial voyage becomes a fight for survival. These attackers don't need to hold a vessel for weeks. They want speed, confusion, a window of time just long enough to control, intimidate, search, or drag someone away under the roar of engines and the bite of wind. That is why sailors who have crossed these waters fear two things the most: the night watch and exhaustion. On paper, there are procedures, alarms, discipline. In reality, there are only tired eyes burning from lack of sleep, hands trembling from tension, and a few seconds to tell a harmless sign from a threat racing in. So when the watch officer sees suspicious contacts appear and disappear, the scariest part isn't that he doesn't know what's coming. It's that he knows exactly. Because if you are late by a single beat, every choice after that becomes worse. Some nights, the biggest decision isn't whether to fight or not. It's whether you dare to call for help early, whether you dare to admit you're being hunted. And that's when the ship's true nature shows. The ship cannot be afraid, but the crew can. The ship cannot tremble, but a voice on the radio can hesitate for half a second. The ship cannot panic, but footsteps in a corridor can trip over each other when the alarm sounds. In tonight's story, this vessel is not an icon on a map. It is a small world drifting through darkness, carrying cargo, carrying lives, carrying one belief: if they hold the rhythm, they will make it through. As the ship enters the high-risk zone, the captain grows quieter. because silence lets you hear change. The engine's tone, the wind's edge, even an abnormal roll. The deck lights are set just bright enough to work, but not bright enough to expose. Key doors are checked again. Crew are reminded to keep discipline, and every eye returns to the night watch. The later it gets, the stiller the sea becomes, and that stillness turns every small sound into a warning. Because one bright dot in the wrong place, one small boat that refuses to peel away, and the entire story breaks hard in another direction, fast and cold before you can even name it. Once the ship pushes deep into the sensitive zone, everything on the bridge shifts into a different state, no longer underway, but being watched. The captain stares at the radar, where the bright dots are no longer lone specks, but begin to form a pack, moving with intention, not like drifting fishing boats or small craft passing through. They hold the ship's line like a silent answer to the distress call that has just gone out. The sea has heard you, but it has not promised it can save you in time. The captain speaks in a low, decisive tone, clear enough that everyone understands no one is allowed to think their own way now. The crew must leave exposed positions, gather in the designated safe area, recheck key doors, restrict the passageways that lead to the deck, and maintain communication with disciplined quiet. No panic, no running outside to see for sure. Curiosity in the dark can cost a life. In the corridors, red lights flash over strained faces. People move fast but do not sprint, because sprinting is the first sign of panic. Shoes slide slightly on damp flooring. A hand grips a rail to keep balance. And in that moment, the brutal truth of night at sea is obvious. The ship may be steel, but people are still people. On the bridge, an observer presses binoculars to his eyes, trying to pierce the haze of salt that coats the glass. At first, there is only wind and the steady engine beat, the sound of calm pretending. Then, another sound slips in, thin and sharp, rising by the second like a small engine charging in with the will of someone who fears nothing. The searchlight swings toward the motion, the beam sweeping across the water, wavering with the swell, and for a fraction of a moment, so brief you doubt your own eyes, a low boat appears, dark-bodied, its white wake thrown up behind it like a comet tail, racing hard, then vanishing beyond the light. In a single blink, it drops into the massive ship's blind zone, where the beam can't reach and the engine noise can swallow human voices. The captain doesn't curse or slam the console. He tightens his grip on the chair, checks the clock, checks the radar, then looks into the darkness ahead, as if weighing the ship's fate in each breath. A second contact appears on the other side, then a third trails behind. These boats are not here to try their luck. They move as if rehearsed, knowing when to accelerate, when to press close, when to split and circle back, patient and relentless in a way that makes your skin crawl. The big ship, no matter how powerful, has its weakness: heavy inertia, a long hull, slower response than arrow-fast skiffs. Every time the captain orders a course change to create distance, the ship needs time to obey, and that lag is what makes everyone on the bridge hold their breath. Below, the dark water throws strange ribbons of light when the propellers bite harder, and those glowing trails feel like an accidental guide. It is as if the ship is drawing a path for the hunters behind it. A young sailor presses against a steel door, face drained as he realizes for the first time that fear has a smell, cold sweat mixed with engine oil, and it doesn't vanish when you close your eyes. On the bridge, the communications officer repeats the distress message again, not begging, only reporting. "We are being approached. We need assistance. We don't have much time." The reply is static and emptiness, as if the whole ocean is watching the ship fend for itself. Then, a dull impact rings out, not loud, but enough to stop every thought mid-sentence. After that comes a long scraping, a harsh, metallic rasp, like someone testing grip right beneath the rail. An observer leans down to look. He sees only white foam and a dark shadow sliding along the hull, matching the ship's movement. The boat is there, right against the steel, so close that if you dropped a rope, it would land on it. No one says the words "on deck," but everyone understands. This is the decisive phase, when distance is no longer measured in miles, but in a few reckless motions. The captain sends an internal command, still low, still clear. Everyone stays in the safe area. No one goes outside. No one acts alone. Anyone still in the corridor turns back. Doors are rechecked. Most of all, keep quiet so you can hear anything unnatural. On deck, under wavering lights, the deck watch observes from cover, not standing exposed, because to stand visible now is to become a target. He hears the sea slap the hull, hears metal tapping metal beneath his feet, and hears the small engine echo off the water like an angry swarm. Something like a rope whips upward, snaps against the rail, then falls with a sharp clang. Immediately after comes pulling, tightening, a force below, trying again, stronger, more determined. The ship tilts slightly on a wave, and in that tilt, the scraping surges close enough to numb your skin. The skiff has used the sea's rhythm to press in, to hold on, to avoid being thrown off. The captain watches the clock not to know the hour, but to measure whether each minute brings help closer, or brings the attackers closer to the deck. Inside, the crew are gathered. Someone calls the roll in a low voice, careful not to let sound turn into chaos. One man grips prayer beads in his pocket. Another clamps his jaw shut, not because they're braver, but because there is no choice left except to stand steady. The searchlight sweeps again, catching a slice of the skiff, catching a crouched figure, only for an instant before darkness swallows it. And that seeing but not holding is what's terrifying. The enemy is close enough for you to glimpse and fast enough that you can't do a thing. A second heavy impact hits. The railing shivers, then shivers harder, then falls into a horrible silence. The deck watch fixes his eyes on the rail. He sees the rope pull tight again. This time it doesn't drop. It holds like an invisible hand drawing it upward, and then, from the shadow by the hull, a dark figure rises, slow, steady, like the sea itself is lifting a secret onto the deck. No one screams, no one runs. There's only wind, engines, and the cold shock traveling up your spine as everyone realizes the approach is over. The moment of contact has begun. When the first figure clears the railing, the deck stops being an empty steel floor and becomes a space that feels too tight to breathe in, where wind and engine thunder fuse into a wall of sound that smothers every word. The deck watch stays tucked behind cover, not rushing out, not shouting, only watching through a wavering beam of light. By the hull, another shadow rises, then a third, all crouched low, moving fast, hugging the darkness as if they already know every blind pocket on the deck. On the bridge, the captain hears the wrongness through the ship's skin before he even sees it, and he doesn't need an explanation. He orders absolute discipline again, repeating a simple, brutal truth. Survival belongs to calm, not impulse. The alarm blares, red lights pulse like a speeding heartbeat. Below, steel doors slam shut, bolts bite into place with clean, cold clicks, as if the ship is folding itself inward to protect the soft center, human beings. In the safe area, the crew are all present. Someone calls the roll in a low voice, keeping sound from turning into disorder. One man clenches a pendant in his pocket. Another bites his lip until it hurts. But everyone understands. They are no longer just sailors on a routine run. They are a crew fighting to live through this night. On deck, the shadows split into two directions. One line stays near the railing, another presses toward access points leading inside. They don't charge wildly like in movies. They move like hunters, fast but measured, avoiding light, using wind to bury their footsteps. The deck watch sees a hand grab a door edge and yank. It doesn't open, only shudders, metal giving a quiet warning before going still. Another figure crouches by equipment, rummages quickly, pulls back as if testing what is worth taking or what is worth breaking. And that methodical testing is what chills you most because it means the enemy is not panicking. The enemy is controlling the rhythm. The captain adjusts the ship's course, keeps power where he can, trying to create lateral roll that makes every move on deck harder. The hull tilts slightly with the swell. The deck is slick. The searchlight sweeps and snaps back, glittering like an eye that cannot stay still. Then, a louder clash rings out. Again, not a human voice, but metal striking metal, a heavy tool thudding against a door or scraping a rail. The sound echoes, cold and blunt, and the whole ship seems to hold its breath. The deck watch draws in tighter, peering through a narrow gap. He sees a figure rise a little higher, signal to the others, then drop back down. In that instant, the captain understands the deck has entered the most dangerous phase. The attackers are aboard, but they haven't achieved their goal, and that frustration can push everything in the worst direction. He orders deterrents that do not turn the deck into slaughter. Stronger lights sweep hard across the deck. The alarm pattern tightens and pressurized. Water runs along the rail, throwing up a thick curtain of mist that blurs sight and makes the steel even slicker. The water hisses like it's tearing through air. Foam bursts white, and the shadows are forced to retreat a step to avoid being swept and sliding toward the edge. But a retreat is not surrender. One shadow clings to a blind spot, trying to advance with the ship's roll. Another pounds the door again, a deep crash hitting like a fist to the chest, making people behind steel flinch despite the barrier. The captain grips the radio and speaks without raising his voice, but hard as stone. Hold positions, keep formation, do not panic. He reminds them the first mission is to protect lives. The second is to keep control of the ship. Everything else comes after. On deck, the shadows grow less patient. A dry, sharp bang cracks near the hull. No one knows exactly where it came from, only that it slices through wind and freezes everyone for half a beat. Then, a short shout erupts. Not a gruesome cry, but a frantic call in the confusion. The deck watch sees one figure wobble on the slick steel and grab the rail to steady himself. At the same moment, the light pins him for a heartbeat before he disappears behind a structural column. Time behaves strangely. Sometimes it flashes by like a blink, sometimes it stretches like a cable pulled tight. The captain watches the clock not for the hour, but to ask how far help is, and whether the ship can keep this rhythm for a few more minutes. In the safe area, roll is called again to confirm no one is trapped in a corridor. An older sailor whispers to himself as if it's the only rope left. Just get through the night. Just get through the night. Then, from far off, a different signal cuts into the wind. A steady, low pulse that doesn't belong to this ship and doesn't belong to the sea. The captain lifts his head, eyes fixed on the horizon as if searching for a single saving light. On deck, the shadows hesitate too, as if they hear the same thing. They look out toward the water, then at each other, and begin to withdraw the way they came, quick, low, clinging to the hull, using the light's blind zones. One slides down first, then the second, then the third. Metal clicks once, then goes still, like the lid on a box full of danger being shut. The deck watch does not chase into darkness. Chasing darkness is walking into a trap. He stays in place, watching the rail, listening as the small engines fade. The water thrashes, then quiets, and realizing a cold truth. This struggle was not about winning. It was about buying time until the moment that matters. On the bridge, the captain exhales, deep, but allows no one to relax. He knows the night isn't finished, and the Gulf of Guinea never promises the attackers won't return. The ship holds speed, holds course, holds discipline, doing the only thing it can do, survive minute by minute until the darkness is no longer a place the enemy wants to remain. When the final sounds along the hull dissolve into the darkness, what remains is not celebration, but a silence so heavy you can hear every engine beat, every gust threading through the railings, every drip sliding off steel. The captain still doesn't allow anyone to loosen up. He knows some dangers don't retreat from fear. They retreat because the opportunity has slipped away. He orders key positions checked again, the crew counted, discipline maintained until they are certain the ship has cleared the worst stretch. In the safe area, the roll caller speaks each name in a hoarse but steady voice, and each time someone answers present, the weight in everyone's chest eases a little, like being pulled out of a rip current one handhold at a time. Someone sits down hard on the deck, back against cold steel, hands still shaking even as they try to clench them still. Someone closes their eyes for a second, then snaps them open again, afraid that if they drift off, the nightmare will return. No one needs to recount what happened. Everyone knows they have just crossed a thin line where one delayed order, one messy reaction, one wrong step could have turned a routine voyage into catastrophe. On the bridge, the captain looks out at the Black Sea, and there is no prideful victory in his eyes, only the clear-headedness of a man who has just survived a blow without earning the right to be careless. He reminds the ship to keep breathing, keep communicating, keep formation, because the night sea can behave like a predator. It tests your reaction, then decides whether to circle back. Minute by minute, the horizon begins to pale, not because the sun has fully risen, but because the darkness is thinning. Only when the first light reveals ordinary waves does the ship finally dare to believe tonight has passed. But passing does not mean forgetting. The aftershock lingers in every sailor's memory. Engine oil mixed with cold sweat, the alarm still echoing in the ears, the faint sense that the railing is vibrating as if an invisible hand is still gripping it. And here, the Gulf of Guinea leaves 3 hard lessons worth keeping. First, in high-risk waters, vigilance isn't fear, it's respect for reality. You cannot hope everything stays fine. You can only prepare so it doesn't collapse when trouble comes. Second, discipline is a human being's armor. In chaos, the ones who hold formation and keep calm have the best chance to live, because panic always opens the door to mistakes. Third, time is your only ally when you're being pressed. Buying 1 more minute, holding 1 more beat, can be the only bridge back to safety. Tonight, the ship didn't need to become a hero. It only had to do the hardest thing, bring everyone back intact. And you, if you were the one in command at the moment the distress call went out and a figure appeared on the deck, what order would you give first to save the ship? Leave your answer in the comments, because every choice reveals the nerve it takes to stand at the edge. And if you want to keep traveling with the Death Zone channel into stories of war, naval clashes, piracy, and breath-holding moments worthy of cinema, where a single decision can change fate, then remember to subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with Death Zone so we can take you to even more gripping, more intense, and even bigger blockbuster stories in the episodes ahead.